3, 2.
Good evening, everyone. It's so good to see so many smiling faces. I see eager, vaccinated and non-vaccinated. I see eager, vaccinated and non-vaccinated minds here today. The Health Outreach 2020 of the Archdiocese of Bombay would like to welcome you all to a very informative session. A little more about our loving health outreach family later. I would like to call our dear Bishop Alvin De Silva to grace this evening.
Thank you, Dr. Cheryl, for inviting me. I'm not going to give a big talk about vaccine. All of you are doctors, I see, and I've taken both the doses of Covishield. So I think that is why I've not got the COVID-19 still. So I've been saved from so far from the virus. I think we all know I think vaccination has been one of the top priorities now in the whole world. People are asking for more vaccine, people are asking questions about vaccine, and people are having doubts about vaccine. So I think this session hopefully will clarify some of our doubts. I would begin this seminar with a prayer to the Virgin Mary, because this is the month of May, and Mary has a very special role to play in during this month of May, as well as in preventing the spread of this virus. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, Amen. O Mary, you shine continuously on our journey as a sign of salvation and hope. We entrust ourselves to you, health of the sick, who at the foot of the cross were united with Jesus' suffering and persevered in your faith. Protectress of the Roman people, you know our needs, and we know that you will provide, so that as at Cana in Galilee, joy and celebration may return after this time of trial. Help us, Mother of divine love, to conform ourselves to the will of the Father and to do what Jesus tells us. For he took upon himself our sufferings and burdened himself with our sorrows to bring us through the cross to the joy of the resurrection. We fly to your protection. O Holy Mother of God, do not despise our petitions and our necessities, but deliver us always from every danger, O glorious and blessed Virgin Mary. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, Bishop Alvin. We feel the Spirit truly moving within us. And now I would like to call our most senior-most health outreach core team member, Dr. Cedric Moraes. He's our godfather, the good doctor. Dr. Cedric, kindly introduce our first speaker of the day.
Dr. Hemant is there.
Yes.
It is my pleasure to introduce Dr. Hemant Thacker to this august body. An MD in internal medicine, he is attached to Breach Candy, Ashok, Bhatia, Reliance, HN hospitals. He specializes in cardiometabolic disorders. He is a fellow of the physician and endocrinology, teacher for the DNB. He is a principal investigator for both national and international clinical trials and has his own audited approved research site. He is a pioneer for antibiotic standards, first policy designed in 2009 in Bhatia Hospital. He is the founder member of Preemptive Disease Internal Forum and the founding chairman of South Bombay Physicians Club. He's presented cases at the World Conferences in Hypertension and Cardiometabolic Diseases across the globe. Innumerable publications in journals, many chapters in API textbook of postgraduate medicine. In 2014, the Giants International Awards were given to him for his contribution to medicine. I have great pleasure in inviting Dr. Hemant Thacker.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you, Dr. Moraes. It's indeed very kind of you to invite me and to accommodate my handicap that I am a little busy today, tied up. You know, the second wave is still waving around and is not disappeared. So we do have a lot of work, but the message is close to my heart. And the message was concerning vaccines. And I want to say a few 10 minutes of your time to tell you that masks can protect, vaccines can eradicate. So just as much as you must wear your mask, which I see people flouting rules, if you don't vaccinate, you're going to be in deep trouble. People ask me which vaccine to take. Any vaccine that you take amongst the available vaccines, you will get 75% plus protection. What is the meaning of protection? That in 75% of cases, the patient will win the battle. In 25%, if you get the virus, the attack will be mild, will not necessitate hospitalization, and you will not succumb to the virus unless you have comorbidities which are not properly controlled. So vaccination is a must. You know, a lot of people have likened the mind state during the vaccination drive of the Indian like a young boy who wants to get married. When you tell him in the beginning, you have to get married, he says no. Then when the vaccine comes around, he says, which girl to marry, I don't know. And by the time he says, yes, I want to get married, the vaccine goes out of stock. The girls go away. So I don't want the vaccines to go out of stock. I want the vaccine to get into your system. I want to see to it that each of you take the anointed vaccine at the appropriate time, produce adequate antibodies and protect. Because the more we vaccinate, the more we protect. The more we protect, the more we trap, harness, and see to it that we squeeze the COVID out of the community. And herd immunity is when more than 30% of my community gets vaccinated. Please do not ask questions, should I or shouldn't I? Do not ask questions, which one? Follow the rules that have been laid down. These rules, there is a method in their madness. If you don't protect yourself, even God will not protect you. So the dictum is, in this era, whether you get Covaxin and 28 days later the second dose, whether you get Covishield or 12 weeks later the second dose, where you get Sputnik with one dose of one variety and the second dose of the other variety at 21 days. Whichever vaccine you get, our country has got a lot of R&D, Zydus is coming out, but you should see that any vaccine that is approved, and please go to an approved center. Don't go to somebody who is promising you round the corner a shot. You don't know the efficacy, you don't know how well he stored it, you don't know what he's giving you. So it is important that you vaccinate correctly, you vaccinate at the correct place, and you vaccinate at the correct time. I think this is the encapsulated message, Dr. Moraes, and all your other colleagues that I want to pass across. The baton today to pass around the community is the baton of syringe, needle, and vaccination. And while we are vaccinated, while we have been vaccinated, while we are producing antibodies, till next Christmas, your best friend will still be your mask. If you do not mask yourself, you are flirting with danger. I know people who take the second shot, hug people, kiss people, have a party, make merry. Don't do that. If man is smart, world is smarter. You have to be careful, and it is only careful tracing of our well thought out steps that will save you, me, this country, and the community. I think, Dr. Moraes, this is the message that I want to give. If there is something specific you want to highlight, please tell.
Thank you, Dr.
Thank
Hemant.
you. Thank you, Dr. Hemant Thacker. You're truly a dynamo powerhouse. The fireball that you are, you have to move on to your busy schedule. Thanks for illuminating info to wave off the next wave. And sadly, we have to wave you goodbye. Thank you for your valuable time this Sunday evening.
So kind.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr.
Our health outreach is a project by our dear Bishop Alvin De Silva under the leadership of Dr. Armida Fernandez, who is nothing but a legend. This project is headed by Dr. Richard, who believes in miracles and he makes them happen. Our core team members, Dr. Cedric Moraes, Dr. Ruin Mascarenes, Florencio, Dr. Giselle, and myself, Dr. Cheryl D'Souza, are all apostles of love with a vision to provide the vulnerable groups in the Archdiocese of Bombay with affordable healthcare services. A little more about our health outreach later. I would like to call Dr. Cedric now to introduce our second speaker of the day.
Who are you calling? Ruin.
Dr. Cedric, you can introduce for us Dr. Sasidharan.
You want to start the second?
Yes, introduce him to us.
I have pleasure now in introducing you Dr. Sanjith Sasidharan. He is in charge of critical care services of Raheja Hospital and Fortis. He has been there for over 12 years, having 18 years experience with Indian, European, and Israeli critical care. His interest is mainly in neurotrauma critical care, mechanical ventilation, and nutrition in critical ill patients. He has 96 articles in peer journals written in one book, 13 book chapters, 9 Best Research Awards, a Gold Medal Award in Critical Care Nutrition, and faculty in many national and international conferences. He is a tireless worker, and during this pandemic was instrumental in making Raheja Critical Care a world-class body. He also has lovely hobbies. He is fond of dancing, hiking, and cycling. I welcome Dr. Sanjith to the seminar.
Thank you, Dr. Moraes, and it's a pleasure to talk to you all today, whoever is tuning in today. And I have only 10 minutes, so I would rather get into the topic. Yeah, I'd rather get into the topic as soon as possible. Yes, on today, India has had 27,894,800 cases with 32,500,000 odd deaths. I mean, the first case of COVID-19 in India, which originated from China, was reported on 30th January 2020. India currently has the largest number of confirmed cases in Asia, second highest number of confirmed cases in the world. But I'll tell you, the greatest achievement mankind has ever had is eradication of smallpox, near removal of polio from the face of the earth, and reduction of the impact of measles, and not really the fight to reach the moon or land a rover on the moon. You know, preventing 2 to 3 million deaths annually. Just imagine the impact that vaccines have had in the past. As of COVID-19, it continues to sicken and kill thousands of people around the world, politicians, health professionals, and all the listeners to the session may be wondering, how do we get out of this lockdown and start to return to normal life? And I can guarantee that this is not going to be simple. Without a vaccine against SARS-CoV-2, coronavirus that causes COVID-19, there will always be a risk that new outbreaks of the disease will emerge. I'm certain about it. There is no doubt about it. Well, we can control the spread of COVID-19 by testing, tracing, quarantining. But the only way to significantly reduce the threat would be like how Dr. Hemant Thacker said, to ensure that a significant number of the population are immune. And that significant number is approximately 60% of the total population. Concerning COVID-19, vaccines are the most potent weapon that we may say that will end this epidemic. India has authorized the British Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine, the Indian BBV 152 Covaxin, and the Russian Sputnik V vaccine for emergency use. Well, how are these vaccines designed? The vaccine platforms are designed to protect against viral diseases. It would be either a component vaccine or it will be a whole vaccine. Now, when you say component vaccine, it means it's a part of the virus, a protein subunit, maybe a virus-like particle, maybe a DNA or an RNA-based genetic material from the pathogen, or a non-replicating viral vector, or a replicating viral vector, or it may be the whole vaccine, which is actually killed, or it is kind of weakened that it cannot replicate. Covishield is the non-replicated viral vector vaccine, and the Covaxin is the whole virion inactivated varicocele vaccine. Similarly, the Sputnik, it is also an adenoviral vector vaccine, but the two shots are different, which are not interchangeable. Both vaccines have completed phase 1 and phase 2 trials. Even the Sputnik has completed that, while the Covishield has completed a phase 3 in the UK and a bridging trial in India. All these vaccines would require 2 doses, and the interval between 2 doses would be 12 weeks with Covishield, approximately 4 to 6 weeks with Covaxin, and 21 days for the Russian Sputnik vaccine. Well, how do they work? All these vaccines produce a T cell response. We have some soldiers in our body called as CD4 and CD8 cells. The CD4 cells are the memory cells that would stimulate the B cells to make antibodies. And it is the CD8 plus cells that actually kills the cells infected with the virus. And this would contribute to the end of this pandemic. Never in the history of preventive science has been such a frantic pace to produce vaccine. Needless to say, there are over 170 vaccine candidates in the preclinical phase and over 60 in the clinical phase of trials. Only 16 vaccines have been approved by at least one country. How many vaccine doses do we require to end this pandemic? First of all, let's do some amount of mathematics. Our population stands around 137 crores. And as of today, around 9.1% have received some vaccine, maybe one dose. And only around 2% are completely vaccinated in our country. Almost 2.5 million people are being vaccinated per day. The Serum Institute that makes Covishield has the capacity to make 100 million doses per month, and whereas Covaxin can make somewhere around 50 to 60 million doses per month. So let's do the math now. This means at best, only 7.5 crores will get completely vaccinated at 1 month, and we have a population of 137 crores. Even if we want to vaccinate 100 crores, we would likely require 16 months minimum. So obviously it looks like COVID is here to stay for a while. And yes, there is a vaccine shortage unless other approved vaccines enter. This is one of the reasons that delaying the shot by a couple of weeks may be of some benefit. At least a little larger population may get at least one shot of the vaccine. There are studies to say that delaying the shot may also be beneficial. So the government planned to move the second dose of Covishield away for 84 days, which has recently come out 15 days ago, does not seem to be very wrong. This will lead out the technical, operational feasibility, and it will help in delivering the vaccine to a larger population. Mind you, we are the vaccine capital of the world, and we are certain that our government is trying to ramp up to 2 billion by 2021. And what is the efficacy of these particular vaccines? What is the efficacy? Well, there are a lot of numbers that comes over here. The numbers that comes in the phase 3 trial, which included more than 25,000 patients, Covaxin demonstrated a 78% vaccine efficacy against mild, moderate, and severe disease. The corresponding figure for Covishield is around 70%. And for Sputnik, it is a little over 90%. Also, when we see 95% efficacy, what does it mean? It does not mean that if 100 gets the vaccine, 5 of them will get sick. It is not like that. It means that among those who get the vaccine, they were 95% less likely to get COVID. These figures gives us a feeling that either one of the vaccine is better than the other, or it means that there was never a fair comparison. First of all, let us understand how these efficacy figures have arrived. See, these have arrived as a result of a randomized control trial. What is the randomized control trial? Study participants are randomly assigned to 2 comparable groups. One of the experimental group where the actual vaccine is administered, and the other where the control gets a placebo, a neutral unharmful substance that is not a vaccine. This process actually takes place in a controlled environment. That's why it's called randomized controlled, in optimal conditions, which means that it occurs in an environment that is scientifically controlled and is similar for both experimental and control groups. What you must understand is that those vaccines were tested in different time periods, where the variants of SARS-CoV-2 were very, very different. Infection was different, severity were different. Means if tested in a population with highly resistant variants, the efficacy would be reduced. Okay, that means these figures may not be comparable. So now what? Well, what's important for us to understand is that any vaccine that has more than a 50% efficacy does the job. That is the goal of COVID-19 vaccine, is not to eliminate the virus, but to remove its ability to cause serious hospitalization and death. And all the candidate vaccines that we have seem to be doing that. So which is the best vaccine? The best vaccine is what you get. Studies have shown that this is also to be very, very effective against the UK variant, double mutant variant, the Brazilian variant, albeit a little bit lower. Let's talk about this a little bit more. See, these are studies of serum that is taken from patients who are vaccinated with or exposed to SARS-CoV-2 and depicted a reduced susceptibility of the new variants to the antibodies generated. However, what is important for us to understand is that the experiments in serum cannot be a good guide to understand whether these variants can evade immunity generated from vaccines in real world settings in the human body in vivo. Importantly, the T cell functions can't be actually tested. So the dip in potency or effectiveness, as mentioned in these laboratory studies, may not be significant. In short, vaccine, whatever it is, will still prevent a severe disease. There's something more important that is in the horizon. Both companies would be coming up with an intranasal variant, which would probably be a game changer due to scalability and the fact that, like polio, non-healthcare personnel can be used to deliver this vaccine. This route may have a very, very high compliance, and the absence of a needle prick may also prevent transmission apart from infections. Is there any evidence in India that the vaccines are effective? Well, huge. It does look like that, at least to us healthcare workers. There does not seem to be any doubt about this. Let me tell you why. Among the 11.6 crore people who received the vaccine, only 5,014 got the disease again, meaning reinfection rate of 0.03% with Covishield, and with Covaxin 0.04%. So yes, vaccines are doing their job. The Covishield costs rupees 300 in a state government hospital and 600 for a private hospital. Covaxin stands at rupees 400 for state government, which has been reduced to 600. And I think Sputnik is priced at around rupees 1,250, including the administration charges. Now see, getting a vaccine is a personal choice. There's no doubt about it. But it is important to understand that stopping the pandemic will require you to take the jab, and thus you taking the vaccine will help a very, very larger cause. We will stop this pandemic. A short period of discomfort is a whole lot better than landing up in the hospital or in the ICU. The development, approval, and rollout of safe and effective vaccines against SARS-CoV-2 is a cause for celebration and provides a glimmer of hope that the end of the global pandemic could be well within our grasp. Yes, the government will give us the jab, and everybody tuning to this webinar would promise to take the jab, and each one of us will contribute to the end of this pandemic. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Sasidharan. That was a very enlightening and explanatory talk. The figures and the math couldn't have convinced us any better how important vaccinations are. And I'm sure you cleared a lot of muddled, unvaccinated minds. So thank you. A little more about our health outreach project. Our health outreach reaches out not just to the poor, but to migrants, to homebound senior citizens, people with limiting diseases, women subjected to abuse, and mental health issues. We have reached out to and are working with almost 40 parishes all over the Archdiocese of Bombay. A special big thank you to Bombay Catholic Sabha for collaborating with us. Advocate Rafael D'Souza, your support really means a lot. Mr. Bento Lobo, you have been the wind beneath our wings. You have made us fly. Love your enthusiastic spirit. Our health outreach family has grown with blessings from our Bishop Alvin De Silva and our living Mother Teresa, Dr. Armida Fernandez. The core team is able to reach out because we have beautiful extensions, our angels. What we call them is CICs, our church in charge. They are a mixed bag of doctors, retired people, highly qualified MBAs. We have it all. But most importantly, they have the heart to serve. And thank you, CICs, for giving us your heart. The CICs work from their home and coordinate with the PVCs of each parish who reach out to the needy. PVCs are the ground level workers. Without them, this project cannot happen and would not happen. A big thank you to all the PVCs of the health outreach. I send this out to all the PVCs. There is no higher religion than human service. To work for the common good is the greatest creed. Thank you to all our 62 PVCs working with us for the health outreach. Let us get back to the vaccination creed. Dr. Cedric, let's call our last speaker. Dr. Cedric, unmute.
Yep. I have great pleasure introducing Dr. Lancelot Pinto, who is a respirologist. After obtaining his distinction in 3 subjects in the MBBS at Lokmanya Tilak Medical Science, he went to Anderson Cancer Institute at Houston and completed his PG studies at Hinduja Hospital. He is a gold medalist in the DNB exam in 2009. He did his master's in epidemiology at McGill University, Montreal from 2010 to 2014, with fellowships in sleep medicine, COPD, rehabilitation. He has 60 peer-reviewed publications and journals and was associated with the University of Athens, the University of Cape Town, the WHO, the USAID, besides McGill University. His main interests are management of COPD, drug-resistant TB, smoking cessation, and sleep disorders. He is a co-patent holder of a digital stethoscope. He has FCCP, American Chest. He is a ECFMG certified examiner, and he is in the ethics committee of Hinduja Hospital. Incidentally, he is also editor of their newsletter. I have great pleasure in inviting Dr. Lancelot Pinto.
Thank you for that very generous introduction, Dr. Cedric. I'd like to thank the Archdiocese Bombay Health Outreach team, Bishop Alwyn, Dr. Richard, Dr. Armida, and their entire team who's clearly doing such a fantastic job in helping individuals across the city. I will be speaking for about 10 minutes on the way forward. So I think Dr. Thacker introduced the topic in terms of why is vaccination important? Why should we all think of getting vaccinated in case we haven't already? Dr. Sasidharan then covered the data in terms of the efficacy of the different vaccines available. And I will try and cover a few questions which are on everybody's mind these days. What about boosters? What about the future? What about the way ahead? When do we stop wearing masks, for example? Let's begin with booster doses. So that's the next question on everyone's mind, whoever has received 2 doses. Do we need boosters? So based on what we know from infection or even from immunization, we have an idea that you are protected for at least 6 to 8 months. That seems to be the general consensus across the world. So this time around, in this second wave that we have seen across the city, we've seen quite a few cases of reinfections, but that's happened now almost a year after the first wave. So for the good majority of last year, individuals who got infected did not tend to have a reinfection for a good 6 to 8 months. So I think people who are infected or people who've received the vaccination are reasonably assured of being covered for a good 6 to 8 months. And after that period is when you really need to start thinking in terms of boosters. What's the evidence? What's the data that we know about boosters? So the vaccine that is available in India, which has the most amount of information available, which is the Oxford vaccine, which is also called Covishield, has just completed a small study. They haven't published it. They just announced it using boosters and suggesting that the boosters do offer additional levels of protection, suggesting that the variant being described, which tend to need a higher level of immunity for neutralization, might be covered once you receive the boosters. There was a concern initially. So the way Covishield works is that it has this spike protein covered with a different kind of a virus. It's called an adenovirus. The adenovirus acts as an envelope in which the spike protein is offered to the body. The concern was that the body, after 2 doses, will get antibodies against the adenovirus vector, the outside vector, to such a strong extent that when you give the booster, it will immediately neutralize the outer virus and therefore not stimulate any immunity. So this was a concern with all adenovirus vector vaccines, like Covishield, like Sputnik as well. It does not seem to be the case. So what seems to be the case is that the booster provides an additional jolt that the system needs, provides a stronger immune response, and therefore we might see the announcement of boosters somewhere in the near future, possibly about 8 to 12 months after the second dose is what the current guess is, but we'll have to wait for more information. The second question people tend to ask is, can we mix vaccines? So we've received first dose of something else, can we do the second dose of another vaccine? Or we've received 2 doses of one vaccine, can the booster be a different vaccine? Now, in technical terms, this is called a heterologous prime boost. What it means was that the vaccine which was used to prime the system is different from the vaccine which is used to boost the system. Now, a lot of what we've learned in COVID comes from natural experiments, things that have happened out of need, and therefore you learn something. So in some countries in Europe, they stopped using Covishield or the Astra vaccine in those individuals under 55 or under 45, based on which country you were looking at. And these individuals, some of whom had received the first dose, had no other option but to switch to the second dose of Pfizer. So they've received the first dose of Oxford, which is Covishield, and then received the second dose of Pfizer because they had no other option. And it looks like that is safe too. These individuals tend to have stronger fevers, stronger instant reactions, but that's for a day or two, and then after that, they tend to settle. So there is data, initial data, to suggest that even if you do mixed vaccines, at least this specific example of Covishield followed by Pfizer, you will do fine. So that's as far as boosters go. And, we all need to be sensitive about boosters in the sense that you wouldn't want to be getting boosters on one hand while somebody in the country has not got their first dose yet. So I think it's extremely important for everyone in the country to get their first dose. And once we reach that level of protection, then we can start having the luxury of thinking of boosters. At the same time, of course, we don't want to miss the window in which immunity starts waning, and then you're susceptible to the disease again. The next question I get asked very often is about herd immunity. So when will we achieve true herd immunity? Again, if you look at the statistics in Bombay, it's very interesting. If you see the first study of antibodies in Bombay, we call these seroprevalence studies, it showed that Dharavi had, or slums in Mumbai, had a seroprevalence of 57%. So 57% of individuals in slums had antibodies, and only 16% of individuals in high rises had antibodies. For some reason, everybody started thinking just in terms of 57%. Everybody forgot the 16% in high rises and said, oh, we are very close to herd immunity because of this 57%. If you notice, in the current wave, about 90% of all infections have happened in the high rises, which clearly tells us that had we focused on the 16% rather than the 57%, we would have possibly done a better job at preventing the second wave or ameliorating the second wave to a great extent. So I don't think we should again start becoming confident in terms of attaining herd immunity because it's still early days. It might take a good 60 to 70% of the population to have antibodies before we can have some sort of a protection in numbers. The fact that a majority have antibodies will then protect the minority that doesn't have antibodies. That's the concept of herd immunity. But I don't think we're there, and I don't think we should bank on that in terms of lowering our guard. What about vaccine passports? So that's going to be the next step in terms of international travel. You will need your certificate saying that you've received 2 doses. Unfortunately, right now, what is being approved is those vaccines which have the World Health Organization approval. Covaxin doesn't yet have that approval. Covishield does. So if you've received 2 doses of Covaxin, you might have to wait for some time. So I think WHO is insisting that they publish their phase 3 data in a peer-reviewed journal before that approval comes through. Hopefully that will come through. And I think the general belief is that the vaccine works well. I don't think anybody doubts the fact that the vaccine works well. This is possibly just a logistical hurdle, which we will overcome eventually. Eventually, it will get published. and that will be on the list of approved vaccines as well. The last question that I'm going to cover is what everybody seems to be asking: when do we get back to the earlier way of life? When do we get back to not wearing masks anymore? When do we get back to going out, meeting people, etc.? I think it's a good couple of years away, honestly. And this is not to be a doomsday prophet. This is not to suggest that that we, that good news isn't around the corner. But I think there should be some nuance to that. So when you say old way of life, I don't think we're going to get back completely to the old way of life, but we can definitely get back to a semblance of it, to somewhere very close to it. I think one constant thing that we've learned throughout the pandemic over the past one and a half year or so, and that hasn't changed, is that the 3 C's are the driving force for super spreader events: closed spaces, close contact, and crowding, right? As long as we avoid closed spaces in which individuals are in close contact with each other and crowded together, I think we should do okay. The earlier 3 things that we've constantly been emphasizing over and over again, which is frequent hand sanitizing, distancing, and masking, still hold true. We've realized, unfortunately, that distancing in closed spaces may not be enough. So just keeping 6 feet away from individuals when you're in a really closed space still carries some risk. So it has to be masked plus the distance that will protect you. It will not be unmasked plus the distance. So if you assume that you're in a really closed space with air conditioning, for example, with not too much ventilation, and you're just 6 feet away from another individual without the mask, and that's good enough, may not be true. Just because we now are realizing more and more that there may be an airborne route of transmission, which suggests that these viral particles may be in the air for some time. So distancing alone will not help you in that situation. So I think, when we talk about coming out of this current situation and resuming life, common sense measures are what's going to really protect us. If we are out in the open, in open spaces, I think we will do fine. If we are, socializing with the event with other individuals on the terrace of a house, courtyards, on playgrounds, even if you're playing a sport, I think by and large we will be well protected. But expecting to be okay in crowded wedding halls, for example, with individuals all packed together, I don't think that's a good idea. And I think that's possibly going to take at least a year, if not longer. So I don't think we're going to get back to that earlier way of life. But I don't think it's as disappointing as the current state of lockdown. I think we will be able to go a lot better than the current state of lockdown, as long as we are smart, as long as we are prudent, as long as we don't make the same mistakes we did the first time around of assuming that we had achieved some sort of herd immunity and we are good to go. As long as we take these precautions, I think we will come to a very close to normal life very soon. And with that, I think we can take questions now, Dr. Cedric. Thank you.
So that's all.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Lancelot, for a very revealing and instructive information. The do's and don'ts were very well explained. We will follow the banning of the 3 C's and keep in mind, you have truly boosted our positive spirit about the vaccination. Before we go ahead with taking your queries, which Dr. Ruin will moderate, I would like to call our project coordinator, Dr. Richard Pereira, to share a little more about the health outreach. Kindly sit back and open your hearts, as your ears are all his. Richard?
Yeah, thank you, Cheryl. Thank you so much. Before we move on to the second part, which is very exciting in answering all those questions, a little announcement from the health outreach side. As Cheryl mentioned in the beginning, the heart of the health outreach is to facilitate healthcare facilities to the poorest of poor. We are going to give you a sneak preview of what is to come on June 3rd, and that is the launch of our Wax the Poor campaign. Yes, it's called the Wax the Poor campaign. Now, India faces some unique challenges logistically in this whole melee of the vaccination. As we know, in our city of Mumbai, there are so many people who are homeless. In fact, the 2011 census says that over 50% of the homeless are based in urban areas. We also know that according to the reality check in 2020, the smartphone penetration in India is only about 40%. There is also a huge language barrier in the English COVID app. So many of our brethren, if I may call them, the marginalized, just don't know how to navigate this COVID app. They just don't have smartphones, and if they do, they can't navigate. They are basically digitally illiterate. So the Wax the Poor campaign, which the Health Outreach plans to undertake ambitiously, is to basically reach out to those marginalized sections of society and help them at least come on par with us by first registering them. And then we're all on the same platform of all looking out for the next vaccine and the next vaccine dose. But registering them and getting them into the ecosystem is what the Wax the Poor campaign is all about. So how can you help us? We are hoping that at the BMC centers, there would be some kind of a consideration given to these sections of society, the poor. So if there's any way you can help us coordinate that and allow some percentage of vaccines to be allocated to this lot of vulnerable populations, please reach out to us. If you can identify vulnerable populations like your watchman, your maid, your driver, people who basically need help in registration, reach out to us. We have centers across. We're doing a pilot study initially in 15-20 parishes, and we hope to expand that. So reach out to us and we'll help those people. And finally, if you would care to donate for the health outreach and all our activities and all of these ways you can help us, reach out to us at healthoutreach2020@gmail.com. So this email ID will be put up on the YouTube chat and on this chat. It's called healthoutreach2020@gmail.com, and do partner with us in this Wax the Poor campaign. Thank you, Cheryl. Back to you.
Thanks, Dr. Rishtad. You're the man, the machine who works on the fuel of the Holy Spirit. Dr. Richard is the driving force to make heaven a place on earth. I now would like to call our very senior pediatric practitioner, Dr. Ruin Mascarenas, to moderate all the queries. Dr. Ruin is one of the most simplest, humblest, and extremely ethical practitioner who gives of himself truly to the poor. Dr. Ruin, the floor is all yours.
Thank you. Okay, before I start the question and answer session, I just like to reiterate the points which the speakers have made, sort of take home messages, okay? Dr. Hemant said, masks protect, vaccines eradicate. So very clear, we must get vaccinated if we have to get rid of this COVID from this planet. Number one. Number two is, he said any vaccine is okay because they're all more than 70% effective. And he gave us the example of the boy to get married. First didn't want to get married, then he hesitated about getting married, and then he just didn't find anybody to get married to. So I think everybody should take that message. Please go and get your vaccine before there are no vaccines available in the market. Okay. Then Dr. Sasidharan spoke about the various vaccines and the intervals. He mentioned how our population was so big that we couldn't have as many vaccines as we require to vaccinate our people, in spite of being the vaccine capital of the world. He told us the efficacies, but apart from all those efficacies, the message was very clear. All these studies are scientific studies done in different phases of COVID, and they cannot be compared. What is important is they're all effective, and you have to go and take what you get. Everybody wants to know where it is 19 paise, where it is 20 paise, and where they can get it 1 paise cheaper or 1 paise safer. It doesn't make much of sense waiting and not taking the vaccine. You all have to go and take your vaccinations. And every vaccine provides 3 things: protection from severe COVID, protection from hospitalization, and protection from death. So please take this message home. You are protected from severe COVID. You will not die. Then we have Dr. Lancelot Pinto spoke about the boosters and mentioned about the priming and the boosting. It spoke about herd immunity, how the slums initially had higher antibody levels, and all of us in high rises thought we were achieving herd immunity. And then the second wave came and put us in our place, and all the high rise buildings have been shut by the BMC. and quarantine. He spoke about the vaccination passports, where the WHO has said that the Covishield is acceptable, the Covaxin not yet, but the Covaxin also will come on board once they submit the phase 3 studies, which are acceptable to the WHO. And he mentioned to us closed spaces, close contact, and crowding. These three C's are things we have to avoid. Crowding in weddings, parties, get-togethers, religious functions, closed spaces which are air-conditioned and there's no ventilation, no windows, and close contact where we don't maintain our distancing because of the aerosol particles which are suspended in the air. So if we take care of these three, we should be able to stay safe from picking up the infection. So now I'll go to the question and answer session. The first question we have is from Lisa, who says, my 75-year-old mother has CLL. Which vaccines would suit her? I think we'll take it in turn. So Dr. Sasidharan, would you like to take that?
Yeah, all the vaccines have been into the market after due diligence done by the government of India, by the task force, the national task force, and the vaccine Niti Aayog. So without any problem, any of the vaccines that you get can be taken, and it is completely safe for you to take these vaccines, completely safe.
Okay. Dr. Brendan Barreto has asked, can asthmatics with an IgG level of 4,000 take a vaccine, and which vaccine should be taken?
The IgE level doesn't really correlate with the probability of you having an allergic reaction. Now, all over the world, the incidence of severe allergic reactions, life-threatening allergic reactions, has been extremely low, almost negligible. And most of those which happen within the first half an hour, which is why you are made to wait at the place for half an hour. You are made to be under observation for half an hour. Now, if you've had a history of having severe allergic reactions to the point that maybe you've had to be admitted in the past, maybe it's safer. Maybe it's safer for you to receive the vaccine in a hospital. That's the advice I would give you. But I don't think there is a reason not to get vaccinated because of an IgE level or because of having an allergic tendency.
And would there be any preference of vaccine?
I just talk in terms of raw numbers. If you talk in terms of raw numbers, by virtue of the fact that the Oxford vaccine has been used in multiple countries across the world, just the sheer data, the amount of information is a lot more in terms of safety. But there's no reason to believe that Covaxin is not as safe.
Okay, Paul has asked, how long does the effect of the second dose of the vaccine last, and do we have to take a booster after that?
I think that answer is probably taken up by Dr. Pinto. We have yet to come to the conclusion as to how long that lasts, because many other countries haven't even received the second booster. Many people haven't received the second dose, and only time will tell us how long it lasts. But from earlier research, we definitely know that this would last anywhere above 8 months. So that's the time probably it may be lasting. Yeah.
Okay, Dr. Pinto, a lady, Marigold, has asked, when should I take the second dose? I've taken the first dose, then I tested positive. Now, when do I take the second dose?
So that's a good question. And I think most experts across the world believe that, if you've had an infection plus, so for some vaccines, for example, the mRNA vaccines, we know that one dose of the vaccine plus infection is good enough. You don't need the second dose. Now, for the vaccines that are in our country, we don't have that kind of information clearly defined. But most individuals would agree that you wait for about 2 to 3 months and then take it after that.
Okay. Sylvia has asked, my senior citizen parents have taken their second dose of Covishield after a gap of 7 weeks and 2 days. And later they tested positive for COVID. Will it help would they require to take the vaccination again?
No, so it's a very good question. It's a very good question. As I get it right, you had COVID, two doses of the vaccination, and then got COVID again. So the first thing, the joy of the entire thing is that you got both the vaccines. So by all practical reasons, the existing COVID would have been a mild disease. It wouldn't have been a severe disease. It wouldn't have warranted hospitalization. It wouldn't have been extremely critical at all. So that is the first thing about the entire story, that even if they got the COVID again, it would have been a very, very mild variety. They don't require another booster. They don't require another dose at all of the vaccine. In fact, this vaccine related immunity will remain for a very, very long period of time. It's only that they got it. And remember, it's like BCG. BCG doesn't prevent you from getting pulmonary tuberculosis. It prevents you from getting CNS tuberculosis. Very similar to that, these vaccines will not prevent you from getting the COVID. It may not prevent you. It may be preventing you from getting the severe form or the critical form, which will make you hospitalized or rather be fatal. That is what it's going to prevent.
Okay, thank you. Albert has asked, how long will these spike proteins last in my body?
The spike protein antibodies, I guess, is the question.
No, the spike proteins which are produced by the vaccine.
Yeah, that's the antibodies he's talking about. So there are antibodies which are produced to spike to the spike protein. Now, again, we don't know the answer to this clearly, but based on infection, it was roughly about 36 days. Every 36 days, your antibodies go down by half. So it keeps halving every 36 days. We don't know if it's the same. The same is true for the spike protein antibodies. But again, most of us believe that they would last for at least 8 to 12 months.
Okay. What happens if a person has been given a COVID vaccination when he's harboring the virus and it's a subclinical infection? Asymptomatic subclinical infection.
Excellent question. Very, very excellent question. So, this phenomenon was noted very much when in the United States it was going huge, and they had the vaccination already in place, and many people, many doctors, many healthcare workers, many normal civilians got the vaccine when they were actually harboring the infection. So it's not, apart from getting a little bit more severe fever or a more severe cold, it doesn't hamper the rate of antibodies at what it appears. In fact, there have been studies that said that when they were found to be RT-PCR positive 3-4 days later, they actually monitored them for an extended period of 6 to 8 months, and they appear to have produced the same amount of antibodies that any other normal person would produce. The problem arises when you have a severe illness and when you take COVID vaccine. At that moment, the body doesn't really produce the kind of antibodies that are required. So in the mild asymptomatic cases, it will still do the same work that it does for general population.
Okay. Elizabeth has asked, I received my COVID negative report on the 21st of March. When should I take the vaccine? Now, probably she said she was positive earlier and then repeated it, because I think if she's negative, she could take it at any time. So probably positive turned negative.
That's right. We would recommend generally 2 to 3 months after you come out of isolation, roughly.
Right. Veena has asked a tricky question which everybody wants to ask. I'm seeking information about the clarity regarding Covaxin versus Covishield. Would that be a good question to answer for us doctors?
But is it with the, no. So all the vaccines have been in place with due diligence from the government. Every vaccine that is there, whatever comes to you, please take that. Please do not choose. It doesn't make a difference. The efficacy, as we rightly, as we've told again and again, it doesn't matter if it is 70 or if it is 80. It is more than 50, and that is more than enough to protect you from a critical or a severe or a very fatal reaction, fatal illness. So please do not choose. There is no point of choosing as of now, because we just need to vaccinate en masse, and it is going to protect you for certain.
Okay, Dr. Pinto, Veena has also asked whether someone with bronchitis can take the vaccine. I think that's okay, right?
Right. In fact, the way I look at it is that if you have bronchitis and you do get COVID, you're probably at a high risk of having moderate to severe COVID. So all the more, you should be at a high priority of receiving the vaccine.
Okay, Dr. Sasidharan, Krishna has asked, any tips for a boozer who is hesitant in taking the vaccine?
In fact, there is, there are no real correlations or associations between alcohol and coronavirus per se. There are no real associations. However, if we take cue from the earlier vaccinations, we do understand that if you take the vaccine, don't consume alcohol for 48 hours. That's what we take from the earlier, but still there is really no correlation between both.
Okay. Dr. Pinto, Susan Pereira has asked, my son used to get random blood clots on his legs at times up to 6 years of age. which were bluish purple, I guess ecchymotic patches. And it looked as though he had banged somewhere. It would pass off after a few days. Now he's 20 years old. I want to know if he can take the Covishield, as I've heard about the blood clot problem.
So this is not an easy question. And I really think that someone like this should see a hematologist before making an educated decision. The reason being, somebody who's 20 has a very, very, very small risk of getting moderate to severe COVID. So the risk of having really bad disease is very low. So therefore, you have to weigh this risk in terms of the risk of clots as well. So this question is relevant for someone who's 20. If this was someone who was 60, this question wouldn't be so relevant because the risk of severe COVID is so high that you wouldn't bother about things like clots. But somebody who's 20 and has had some sort of a clotting problem in the past, I think maybe see a hematologist, make sure that you don't have any real clotting disorders, and then take an educated decision based on that.
Oh, thank you. Dr. Sasidharan, Jennifer is 61 years old. She lost her husband in September, that's 9 months back. And in April, a month back, she lost her mother. She is on atorvastatin, neomercazole, levocetirizine, and calcitriol as medications. And she now requires to go and take her Covishield, which she's very scared to go and take. She takes clonazepam as to relieve her anxiety. She wants to know if she can take the clonazepam and go for the jab.
So the question is, are there too many side effects of these vaccines when she's on so many medicines? The side effects are as much as you would cross the road and a car would come and bang you. That is the amount of side effects that it has. So that is the risk that you get when you cross the road. The same risk is there when you go and take a vaccine. It is 0.004% chances of getting a side effect. And they are also very mild and moderate in nature, which includes soreness or a small fever for a day. With clonazepam, there is no interaction. You can take the clonazepam and go and take the jab. There is no problem at all.
So Jennifer, you can go ahead and take the vaccine and the clonazepam too. Rennie has said, if somebody is positive for antibodies, can they be vaccinated immediately?
Yes. In fact, that's the whole argument. So this question has been asked before in terms of, if I have had COVID, if I've been infected, is there a role of getting vaccinated at all? And the answer to that is yes, because the robustness of the antibody response that is generated by a vaccine is far better and far more sustained than that as a result of natural infection. So the fact that you have antibodies suggests that you may have had natural infection. The vaccine will only boost that natural infection and make you more and protect you in a stronger way.
Okay, and Dr. Sasidharan, she's also asked, can we take 2 different doses of, that means 2 different vaccines, since there's a shortage of some vaccine? That's a mixed vaccine.
So as of now, the data is not there to mix Covishield and Covaxin. So at the moment, we cannot recommend that combination, and we wait data for the same. But as of now, please do not mix and match vaccines. As of now, if you get Covishield, please take Covishield. If you get Covaxin, please take Covaxin.
A rheumatoid arthritis patient, Daisy, her CRP is, she's got rheumatoid arthritis since 10 years and her CRP is 28. She's on methylprednisolone, naproxen, and leflunomide. She wants to know if she can go ahead and take the vaccinations without risk of complications.
So the concerns with taking the vaccination in the presence of steroid, which is methylprednisolone, is not so much related to safety because these are not live vaccines. It's more related to efficacy. Immunosuppressive medication, will you mount an antibody response to the vaccine is the bigger question. I think she should discuss it with her rheumatologist. It would also depend on the dose of methylprednisolone that is on. So sometimes, if it's about 4 mg per day, I think it would be okay. If it's higher than that, and if there is a reasonable belief that the dose is going to come down in the next month or so, I would wait till a lower dose is feasible. But if we've reached a point where we know that the dose is not going to come lower than that, then I would suggest that you go ahead and still take the vaccine. The efficacy is what is under question. I don't think it's unsafe to take the vaccine.
Dr. Sasidharan, Zeus has asked, how does one get the black fungus and how do you cure it?
So that's a big debate going on in as of now, and there are a lot of theories that talk about it. But on the whole, it has always been around. It's only that now our patients have been treated with a large dose of steroids, and they've been in hospital for a long period of time, and that's probably the reason that many of our COVID patients have been getting mucormycosis, which is called colloquially as black fungus, but it's unrelated to COVID, but it's related to the treatment of COVID and the severity and the immunosuppression that COVID causes, because of which we're getting mucormycosis. Please do not think that it is like an epidemic as of now. Yes, we are having a lot of cases, but it will definitely come down as we are educating public and healthcare personnel.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Pinto, ZS has also asked, what is the post-COVID syndrome, the side effects which come up specific to the new mutation? That's the second wave. And what are the post-COVID hygiene tests that one should adhere to?
So the post-COVID syndrome is a bunch of different symptoms that present in different organ systems. So they could be neurological. We've done an article in the Hindu. If somebody wants to search and find it, it covers the entire spectrum. But it could range from having fatigue for a really long time, which can go up to 3 to 6 months sometimes. What has been described as a brain fog, not being able to think clearly. This aches and pains all over the body. That's as far as the neurological, neuropsychiatric manifestations, being depressed, having mood swings, not being able to sleep properly. So that's a lot of the neurological and psychiatric manifestations. But it could also be related to your gut. So having diarrhea off and on. It could also be related to your heart, what we call the autonomic nervous system. So heart rate fluctuations. Suddenly your heart rate goes really high. Suddenly it goes down. Blood pressure fluctuations. Your body temperature fluctuations. So suddenly feeling very cold, suddenly feeling warm. Again, I think the caveat that needs to be mentioned is that it's a very, very, very small fraction of individuals who have a prolonged post-COVID syndrome. So having it for about 2 to 4 weeks is reasonably common. And that's true for most viral infections. So even a viral infection like dengue leaves people with a lack of energy for a really long time. But this post-COVID syndrome being described for up to 6 months, for up to a year, is extremely uncommon. So I don't think one should be very afraid of that. One should be sensible in terms of making sure that you sleep adequately, making sure that your food is nutritious, you step up your protein maybe for a month during the recovery phase. Make sure you don't push yourself too hard, don't overdo the exercise part in the recovery phase. And just, common sense measures for most individuals will cause them to return back to normal levels in about a month or so.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Sasidharan, there's a question saying there are people dying due to heart failure post-COVID. Are there any tests which can be done to detect this condition?
So what I'm understanding is that there are patients who, some of the patients of COVID, a very small variety, or very small, and they are usually severe, moderate to severe category of patients that do have a phenomenon called as myocarditis. Now, this does occur in the moderate to severe category where the heart suddenly stops functioning like the way it used to function. It becomes weaker, it becomes dilated. So this is something that is seen, and this is usually your treating doctor will come to know the moment he has examined this patient, and he will pick it up very quickly, because it's a clear distinction from what he was to what he became post-COVID with this kind of cardiac manifestations. And the test required for that is usually a 2D echo. A 2D echo will give us the answer there.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. And the last question I have is from Dr. Shiba Gomes, where she's, sorry, the second last question is there any portal on which we can report side effects to the vaccination?
Not to the best of my knowledge.
Okay. Mr. Nair has asked if these vaccines are given for authorization is only for emergency use, how safe can they be? Dr. Sasidharan?
Yeah, so that's an excellent question. I mean, the meaning of emergency use authorization is under the situation of a pandemic where there are many people that are dying, these measures have been taken for the larger use. This is for the larger good. Now, where here most of the vaccines that have come onto the market is after a phase 1 and a phase 2 trial. Now, when a phase 1 and a phase 2, it means the safety is the most important part in these vaccines. It has been deemed safe, and that is the reason it has come out. The efficacy, whether it is 70, whether it is 80, whether it is 90, that time will tell. The long-term side effects, time will tell. But you must understand that it is extremely safe, and the government has taken due diligence and given disseminate across. It's not just one person who decides this, it's a whole group of individuals and organizations that decide this and comes out of the market. And it is rightly so. It's a frantic pace, and it is really a miracle that has occurred that we have vaccines so quickly in the disease.
So it is not the government and the medical fraternity who's thrusting the responsibility onto the patient and saying, see, this is emergency use. You know what will happen if something goes wrong. It's only a system. Okay. And the last question I have is, why is the AstraZeneca still not approved in the US? When so many doses have been given in India with so much of safety, why is it not approved in the US? Dr. Pinto?
To the best of my knowledge, there are some politics involved in all of this. It's not that straightforward.
Okay.
Also, I think the FDA has certain criteria which were possibly not met yet. But I don't think. I mean, most of Europe is giving AstraZeneca, so I don't think it's so much of a safety issue.
Okay, Dr. Cheryl, I have come to the end of the questions which came to me on the net before we started the seminar. Giselle has got some questions, but we're already at 6:35. So how do we take it forward?
Dr. Lancelot and Dr. Sasidharan, we've got an audience that's still very thirsty and hungry. Are you all good to go? Another 10 minutes?
Sure.
Or
so?
Sure. Really thirsty. So
Dr. Giselle, will you take it forward?
I'll take them. I have
Dr. Cheryl will do.
Dr. Cheryl, okay, fine. Thank you.
So we've got Bonnie D'Souza asking whether she can wait for a nasal vaccine in view of a person with comorbidities and heart and stroke conditions.
In fact, it is not advisable to wait if the patient has got comorbidities. If he gets the vaccine, he should take it right away. It's not this way that the nasal vaccine is going to be much more safer than the injectable vaccine. So the fact that the chance of getting infected is much higher. And getting a severe illness is much higher when you have comorbidities. Hence, we should take the vaccine, whatever is getting available for that particular individual.
Dr. Lancelot, a senior citizen wants to know, Godwin Pinto, whether it is safe to take the vaccine for a diabetic patient.
In fact, I would make the argument that it's more important for a diabetic patient to take it than a non-diabetic patient to take it, right? So one thing I think we need to constantly remind people is that everything in life is about risk versus potential benefit. So you're not going to have something that's 100% safe in life when it comes to medicines in general. You have to ask yourself, what is the risk of me having moderate to severe COVID if I get infected? And that risk is quite high for somebody with diabetes. And therefore, the vaccine risk becomes minuscule in comparison.
Thank you, Dr. Lancelot. Mr. Roy wants to know if it's required to undergo any test, even if you are not aware of any prevalent or existing diseases before taking vaccines.
Not at all. Not at all. As we are again and again saying, you don't require to do any test prior to take the vaccine. You just go in and take the jab. It's a safe thing to do, and it's important for you to get it as quickly as possible.
Godwin Pinto wants to know, what are the views on the gap between the 2 doses of Covishield? Initially, it was 4 to 6 weeks, now 12 weeks. What made the government change this?
So, I mean, this is a slightly complex issue in the sense that the originals, so in terms of science, there's nothing wrong in stretching it to 12 weeks. In fact, there were studies which proved without a doubt that the longer, the better. So, this whole debate about whether the government did it just because of shortage of vaccine is not necessarily true. So the science is sound. Taking it at 12 weeks is not a problem. Now, the only element of uncertainty or the element of or the problematic issue now that has arisen is that there is data which suggests that when it comes to the new variant, which we are currently experiencing in India, a single dose has very low efficacy. It's probably around 33% or so. So delaying it for up to 12 weeks exposes you for those 12 weeks, or a significant proportion of individuals will be exposed for those 12 weeks to this new variant, which could cause a problem, which is why the UK is revisiting their guidelines and trying to make the interval shorter, because they are worried about the Indian variant taking over in the UK. So that's the element of uncertainty right now. I don't think there's there's a win-win solution, unfortunately. I think it's okay right now with the 12-week, I don't think the government's giving us an option right now. But in all probability, the Indian government also might revisit this once the vaccine stock gets adequate enough. That being said, even from a herd immunity, from a population point of view, I guess it's better to have a lot of people having one dose within them rather than, some people having 2 doses and a lot of them having no doses. So it's a difficult question. I don't think this is an easy question.
Sylvia Fernandez wants to know, what about asthmatic people? Can they take the vaccine?
Yeah. So the relationship to chronic obstructive pulmonary disease or respiratory illnesses or asthma, along with COVID vaccinations, is not very clear. I mean, there are no studies that say that they are at a higher risk to get more side effects as compared to the general population. And needless to say, we again reiterate the fact that it is safe enough to go and take the vaccine for any of these asthmatic patients, and there is no specific choice that they should be dealing with.
Thanks. Joel wants to know whether a person with a bad cough can take the vaccine.
I would wait, intuitively. I mean, if it's a cough that's just started, for example, it would be reflective of something that's going on. You either have an infection or something's triggered it off. I would wait simply because if you take the vaccine at that point, you have a fever for the next 2 days. You won't know whether that illness which caused the cough is causing the fever or whether it's the vaccine that's causing the fever. Second thing is, if you have a cough, you should ideally be getting yourself swabbed, right? I mean, this could be COVID itself. So I would wait. I would wait till the cough gets sorted out.
Sanil Crasto is asking about the black fungus and yellow fungus. I think you all have enlightened on that. If anything specific, you can message Sanil Crasto. Trupti wants to know that one of her relatives has encephalitis. Can she take a vaccine? The fever aggregates the encephalitis.
No, so this is a tricky question. Encephalitis is something that remains for a very, very long period of time. It is not something that heals in a day or two. As Dr. Lance really put it, that if you take a vaccine and whether if the fever comes in, would probably be you're thinking whether the encephalitis is causing the fever or whether it's the active encephalitis or whether it's the vaccine itself causing the fever. So let the encephalitis settle, speak to the neurologist, and together take a call, an educated call on when we should be taking the vaccine in such cases. It's not easy to say as of now, take it or not take it, but it has to be a clinical call taken by the doctor and the patient themselves.
Deepan D'Souza says that AstraZeneca has been discontinued by many European countries and Canada. Why is it so that Indians aren't given an option of different vaccines?
But we are. I mean, we do have the Covaxin as an option. And the discontinuation was the same argument that we spoke about the 20-year-old earlier, right? I mean, somebody who is at a very low risk of getting moderate to severe disease, that's the context in which you should think about the risk of clots, which are, again, extremely rare, but they become relevant if you know for a fact that this person has a very low probability of getting moderate to severe disease. Which is why when we talk about banning or we talk about limiting, most of that has happened in the under 45s or the under 55s, where the belief is that the risk of moderate to severe disease is so low that, these arguments come into play. I don't think these arguments come into play for older individuals.
Donna is asking, what about the schools and colleges? We have around 60 students or more in a class. How do we safeguard our children?
So once we kind of reasonably assume that a large population of us have achieved a kind of herd immunity, we've achieved a kind of situation where many of us have got vaccinated. I think that is the time that we'd probably be opening up, and that the government will take a very, very cautious decision on doing so. I think we should not be hurrying up in this matter, because we know that the children who possibly harbor many of the amount of asymptomatic kind of infections, and they may transmit among each other, and they may go home and infect their own senior citizens or father, mother at home. So this call will be taken by the task force on the whole, and they will give us a right time when we are sure when we can send them to the school.
Marina says that she's having pain in her left arm since the time that she's been vaccinated. Is this a side effect? It has been more than 50 days now. Some say you even get a blood clot. So she's scared hearing all this.
I mean, 50 days is a reasonably long time. 50 days is close to 2 months. You shouldn't ideally be having pain at 2 months. You should get it evaluated like you would get any other pain evaluated, just in terms of, see a rheumatologist or see a general practitioner who can do a sonography. Maybe just make sure that there's nothing else going on there.
Dominic wants to know, when can the person be infected with corona, person who is infected with corona take their vaccine? Can they take it immediately?
So all the mRNA vaccines can be taken immediately. All said and done, Covishield and Covaxin is the ones that we have. This can be taken after a period of around 3 weeks to 4 weeks. This can be taken very, very safely. That is the time that you're completely out of all the problems. You're no longer ill. So it is around 4 weeks after recovery that you can probably take these vaccines.
Joe D'Souza says that the youth hesitate to take vaccines. So is it okay?
Can't hear.
Can you hear me? Am I audible? Joe, yeah.
Yes, we can hear you.
Joe D'Souza says that the youth hesitate to take vaccines. So is it okay or?
No, it's not okay because again, it's not the youth who have to just think about themselves. They also have to think about the people that they interact with, their parents, their grandparents who are possibly at home. Number one. Number two, the fact that all the statistics talk about deaths, right? We talk about mortality. We say that young people don't die, but the unfortunate reality is that young people may not die, but some small proportion of young people still have quite severe disease, still go through a reasonably rough COVID experience, still will possibly be left with lungs that are probably at 70% of what they were before COVID. So it's not, the entire focus tends to be just on deaths, and that seems to be very reassuring that nothing happens to young people. It's not true that nothing happens, it's just that maybe they don't die, but they still could have severe disease, and that's reason enough to get vaccinated.
Naseem says that her husband is a post-AVR patient in 2007 and angioplasty surgery done in 2019. He is of age 40. Can he take the COVID vaccine?
Yeah, so he if it's not a bioprosthetic valve, if he is on anticoagulation, even then, the government has actually said that they can safely go for the vaccine by omitting one dose and go ahead and get the vaccination. Otherwise, even if she's on antiplatelets like Ecosprin for the angioplasty that she's taken, there is no reason not to go and take the vaccine. They can easily go and take the vaccine. It doesn't cause an increased amount of bleeding or anything like that, provided you don't rub the spot, you just press the spot. That's the only thinking.
Donna wants to know what is the risk of blood clots in the young after taking Covishield?
It's still an extremely rare event, but the only reason is that it still warrants consideration because at that age group, even a rare event shouldn't happen. That's the reason it's got all this attention. But if you look at the denominator and the number of cases that have happened, it's an extremely rare event. So like, Sanjith earlier said, the probability of crossing the street and meeting with an accident is higher than the risk of getting a blood clot from the vaccine. However, to some people, crossing the road may not be an acceptable risk. So, it's something that you need to discuss with your doctor if you're not absolutely convinced that you should take it.
Anthony wants to know, can a person suffering from fits, epilepsy take the vaccine?
So I think this is all coming from the relationship of measles with the brain issue and vaccination, things like this. There's been a whole society that actually talked about that in the past. But we don't have any kind of relationship for that with the existing COVID vaccine, and it can very safely be taken for patients with fits. In fact, it should be taken for those patients with fits because it's a comorbidity after all.
Dr. Pinto, Susan Pereira is specifically asking you, she wants to know whether Covaxin would be a better option for her son regarding clots he has as a baby. He used to get bluish marks.
No, so that's a fair, given the fact that we don't have the clot issue raised as a red flag with Covaxin, while it has been raised with adenovirus vector vaccines. So J&J and Oxford, which is Covishield, are the two vaccines where the red flag has been raised. So yes, I think it would be a rational choice to give her son Covaxin instead of giving him Covishield.
Denzel Drago wants to know, if one has COVID and recovered, is the vaccine necessary? If yes, and when?
Yes, so it's a very important question. So when you get COVID, the immunity that you're getting is kind of an innate or a natural immunity that you get, which is not, it's just very ephemeral. When you say ephemeral, means it doesn't last for a very, very long period of time. It lasts for barely around 3 months to 4 months. Whereas the vaccine related immunity that you get, it lasts for a very, very long time, and we expect it to last beyond 8 months to 12 months. This is what we expected. Not only that, it's not only the durability, it's also the efficacy. That means the way it fights an infection is much, much more tougher than when you get a native infection. And that is the reason vaccine or supersedes a natural infection. And that is why we all should take the vaccine, even if you've got COVID.
Trupti wants to know, if a person has elephantitis, can they take vaccine?
So I'm guessing they've had elephantiasis since a long time and have a lymphatic obstruction in the foot. I'm guessing that's what the context is, and I don't think that's a risk factor at all. I mean, somebody can definitely go ahead and receive the vaccine. But again, if there's some active inflammation going on in that foot, etc., maybe you should consult your doctor before making that call.
Yeah, Beryl wants to know whether a pregnant woman or a person having PCOD can take the vaccine.
So that's a big, very, very important question. And pregnancy, as of now, the government hasn't really released a clear-cut document saying that pregnant women can take the vaccine. And recently, around 10 days ago, the Federation of Obstetric and Gynecologists actually put it into the boots of the doctor concerned treating the patient to actually decide whether the patient requires the vaccine or not. So the answer goes to say that if your consulting doctor, gynecologist, feels that you require the vaccine with respect to the job, with respect to the way you are, with respect to where you're staying, things like that, then he may take a call to give you the vaccine. Nobody's going to refuse you from giving the vaccine, but the studies per se are not very clear on pregnancy and at the moment Covishield and Covaxin.
Leslie Fernandez says his mom is asthmatic and she's 78 years old. She has completed 2 doses of Covaxin and she was not well for 6 days after the second dose. She completed the second dose on April 29th.
Right. So the question was, I guess, related to the fact that why was she unwell for 6 days? And that can happen. You know, some people can have a prolonged reaction post-vaccination, can have a lot of fatigue. Fever can last for up to 3 to 4 days sometimes. So it's not uncommon for a person to have a prolonged reaction. I mean, it's not extremely common, but at the same time, I don't think it's a cause for concern.
Iona D'Souza says a person in early 20s who had a history of blood clots as a child up to 6 years, would Covaxin be better than Covishield for this person?
Yeah, so this question has been answered. It does mean that yes, on the evidence that we have now, Covaxin definitely has an edge over the other. But again, Covishield, the incidence of clotting is so minuscule; it is 0.004% is the risk of having clots. But yes, Covaxin rationally seems to be better at this moment, logically looking at the evidence.
Advocate Raphael wants to know, since the general perception is that corona infection is due to low immunity, apart from vaccine, what are the other immunity boosters that you all can suggest?
Absolutely nothing, unfortunately. So I don't think there's any proof to suggest that anything can protect you. If you have comorbidities, make sure those comorbidities are well taken care of. So if you have diabetes, make sure your sugars are under control. If you have high blood pressure, make sure your blood pressure is under control. If you have any other comorbidities for which you've not been careful about your health, this is the time to get things in order. So, for example, if you have asthma and you've not been taking your inhaler, you have some days where you wheeze, you don't wheeze. This is not the time to experiment with the medications that you have. This is the time to be absolutely regular with your medications to make sure your background comorbidities are well taken care of, so that if you do get COVID, you will not be at a higher risk of moderate to severe disease. There is nothing, absolutely nothing that is proven to work to be taken in advance, which will kind of protect you in some way from COVID.
Beryl says that we did not clarify about the PCOD with the vaccine, whether PCOD people can take the vaccine.
Yeah, PCOD patients can take the vaccine. There is no reason to say that we should not take the vaccine. Yes, you can take the vaccine safely, soundly, without any problems. Yes.
Okay. I think on the chat box, what I see, those are not vaccine related queries. And since we are almost run out of time and really would like to,
Cheryl, I think we'll have to wind up.
yeah. So I'd like to thank you, docs, for patiently answering. Sorry, we were so hungry and thirsty. I think we probably made you all hungry, but thank you for the patience and your valuable time on a Sunday evening.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Lancelot, Dr. Sanjith. Thank you.
I would now like to call Dr. Giselle, our sweetest and most empathetic hard worker of our core group, to give the vote of thanks.
Good evening, everybody. It is indeed a pleasure, and I am truly honored to be chosen to give this vote of thanks. They say gratitude is the ultimate attitude. And today we have so much to be grateful for. I would like to thank our doctors, Dr. Thacker, Dr. Sasidharan, and Dr. Lancelot Pinto especially, for sparing of your precious time on a Sunday evening and educating us on this very important topic. Thank you, doctors, for the injection of awareness and a good dosage of information, and especially for vaccinating us with your views. This thank you is incomplete without a thank you to our very own Bishop Alvin De Silva, who is a true shepherd to us, Dr. Armida, who spearheads the health outreach with her gentle and wise ways, and all the other core group members who are working tirelessly. Thank you, dear team, for all the efforts that you're putting in to reach out to the poor and the marginalized. Thank you to Ashok, Shyam, and OrthoTV for this platform to air our program on Zoom and YouTube. And most importantly, thank you to all the audience for taking time out to attend. We want to thank all those who send their queries for the question answer session. Thank you, Dr. Ruin, for handling the question answers so well. And now let us all go out to help people get vaccinated with the vaccine, and also to get vaccinated with the true joy of giving. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Thanks.
Thank you,
Bye.
doctors. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much and good evening. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.